Hey, I'm Zach.
And I'm Tim. We're from Rise Against, and you're watching LiveTheScene.com.
It's more than just music as well.
I think
You can be punk
when I first started, the one thing that stuck out to me most was the fact that every band that was worth their salt had something they were saying, and they all the common bond. I mean, the music was completely different, and that was something that was very interesting to me as well. There was an umbrella that was called punk rock, but X fit in that, the Germs fit in that, Black Flag, the Dickies, the Descendants. All these bands sounded completely different, looked completely different, but they were all underdogs, and they were all the outcasts, and you could tell that just from looking at them. And so that appealed to me, being an underdog and outcast myself. And they were all saying something, you know. And going to those shows, there was a community of other people that were just like me. So that feeling of belonging when you're a disenfranchised youth, to me, is really what the whole punk rock thing was.
Do you think it's still alive and well, or do you think it's...
I think society is still doing an effective job of alienating the youth, you know. And as long as society is there doing that, then you can't stop punk rock, you know. Until society stops, you know, alienating the youth and making them feel completely disenfranchised and not a part of the world, you know, punk will just end up existing. It'll be created in all the different, you know, alleyways and street corners of this world, you know what I mean? Like in all the basements and garages, and you know, in the bedrooms where kids are listening to records. It'll always be there, you know, and it'll come out in many different forms. I think, like you said, it'll come out in fashion, it'll come out in music, it'll come out in things that aren't even guitar related sometimes. You know, I think that, you know, that a lot of hip hop as a distant cousin of punk rock. You know, it comes from the same mentality, and so yeah, in that sense, I think that it's very much alive and well.
Was it through music that you both like, you know, like the political and like animal rights? Was it through music that you kind of first were made aware of? It was any kind of bands that...
For me it was, yeah.
That, like,
yeah, for me it was. You know, I had my formal education of school, but then, you know, the hardcore community, you know, I had my secondary education. You know, the things that weren't being talked about in school, the parts of history that weren't being illuminated in school were sort of being brought to my attention through the different bands that I would go to see, who not just play a show but also talk about what the songs meant, you know, or they bring their records and t-shirts, but also bring a flyer, you know, about animal rights or about a situation going on in South America, you know, or something like that, you know, and it was sort of very eye-opening stuff. And then it was the first glimpse for me that, well, there's a lot more information out there, you know, that my teachers aren't telling me.
The internet's helping that as well, because
there was no internet.
It's more that's what I mean, like now, because it was like a bit of a closed book back then, wasn't it? Like,
it was.
This was right, this was wrong.
It was.
Yeah.
It was a little more.
But now you can just kind of.
Yeah, it was
have
like
the alternative view of it.
Yeah, the internet's definitely radicalized, you know, punk and what underground is, and you know how it's made it difficult to even stay underground. You know. There's a lot of pros and cons, I think. So, you know, the communication is obviously important, you know, especially getting, you know, we were lucky enough to grow up in fairly big cities that had really vibrant music scenes, but, you know, most of America doesn't live near a big city, and, you know, and has struggles with getting access to really good music, and so the internet certainly helps in that sense.
But you got to think before the internet, there was always also a little bit more of a closer knit thing. It was like the kid that had the Minor Threat record besides you. There was something really special about that. Now that kid's at your fingertips, but before that took a while of cultivating that relationship, you know, right. And then meeting his friends and then meeting their, you know, and so there was something a little more close knit about that. I mean, like Tim says, there's pros and cons to both, but back then it felt like it was a little more of a secret society. You know?
Yeah, you had to really, you know, look for where the shows were happening, you know what I mean? It was almost like the way they describe like the old raves, you know, how you had to like go through a secret person, and you know, I know Chicago had, you know, a shows list that was updated every week, and you could only get it at the show. And so unless you just kept going to shows, you'd be out of the loop. You know, you had to go to the show, there'd be a flyer for the next show, you get the flyer for the next show, you go to that show.
Wow.
And then, but if you missed some shows, you know, you were a little out of the loop. And then one guy had a thing called the Punk Rock Hotline, where he would leave a list of shows on his answering machine. And when you call,
Just cool.
you just call, and you get his answer machine. You'll go through and you write down the shows you wanted to go to.
That's like Prohibition or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Very secret.
Yeah, totally. It was very underground, especially in Chicago. There wasn't like an actual all ages venue for a long time before the Fireside Bowl, and so the shows were spread out all over Chicago, like veterans halls and YMCA's and all kinds of different things. So each show was this very special sort of thing. I'd show up to spaces that were like, when you'd show up, the guys from the AA meetings would just be putting the chairs away, and then you show up and a show would happen. It was like sort of community spaces and it made it a lot of fun. It made you actually have to find all these shows,
You're kind of more like grateful that you grew up when you did rather than now.
I am. I really.
If you're like 15, 16 now.
Yeah, I don't know what it would like to be growing up now and look at the way music is and the internet and everything. It's a little. I don't know. I think, but like we said, I guess there's pros because it makes it all very much at your fingertips. But I wouldn't change the way I grew up. I think it was a lot of fun, and like Zach said, it was very much this private party, and this sort of like underground society, and it was a lot smaller, I think we grew up in a time before bands like Green Day and Blink-182 and Nirvana really changed music. There was a time where, at least in my town, if you saw a kid with a skateboard, you stopped that kid and be like, "Hey, what's up, man?" Like you were friends with that kid, just by default. I met the friends I had in high school because I was wearing a Black Flag hat that I had mail ordered from SST and sent cash and got it back. And I went to high school with a Black Flag hat on, and some kid stopped me and was like, "Yo, man, you got a Black Flag hat on, and I don't know you. Like, what's your name?" And that was how we became friends. Stuff like that. Nowadays, we can walk down the street right now, and you'll see punk kids all up and down the street.
Everywhere.
So, and the things like, and there are people out there that wear Black Flag shirts because they have no idea what it is. They just think it's kind of this cool punk look, and so it's different.
Barack Obama, I think that's going to help America a lot. I think some bands might not have as much to sing about. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think that I don't think that we'll ever suffer from a lack of things to sing about. You know what I mean? I think the notion that with Barack Obama all things are fixed is kind of far-fetched. But I think if anything, it's like the election of Barack Obama should be energizing Americans to realize that dissent equals progress. Someone like Obama is in office because people got fed up with the Republican Party and their sort of propaganda of fear that they subjected Americans to. And Americans said, "Hey, we're sick of this. We're sick of you telling us if we don't vote for you, terrorists are going to bomb our houses." And so it was sort of that change that is taking place in America right now, and it certainly took place when the administrations changed over. That is a product of dissent. And so, if anything, it's now more important than ever to sort of lift the stigma that surrounds dissent, and so Americans can realize like critical thinking is what got us here. And critical thinking is what will keep us here. Is that we can't just sort of back off and say, "Oh, everything's good," because in that apathy, we will just end up revisiting another Bush administration under a different name.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to add to that a little bit. I don't particularly envy Barack Obama's position. If he can just change some of the things that have been so crazily fucked up over the last 8 years, then that would be a great thing. But to have the notion that he's going to change everything and turn everything around.
That's a worry that people think.
Yeah.
Especially the position he's coming up with, all the financial aspects as well.
Well, he's running on hope, and he's running on change, which is a great thing. But as far as like us having nothing to sing about, I mean, there's no way everything's going to be changed. Yeah.